It's very hard, isn't it, to see how the Archbishop of Canterbury can go to bed tonight still in his job. Yeah. Because the clamour for him to go is universal. I haven't read one defence of him this morning.
And it's especially damaging from one of the most senior bishops, the Bishop of Newcastle, a woman bishop. She said his position is untenable. It is. He was told in 2013, when he was the Archbishop of Canterbury, about this terrible man's abuse of young boys, violent abuse, caning them so severely that he would then give them nappies to absorb the blood. Yes. Oh, absolutely appalling. And this was then probably allowed to continue because Welby did nothing about it. So the police never investigated, started investigating until after he died. It's appalling. And this report,
which came out to South Africa,
he did,
to continue the abuse.
He did,
and in all that time, Welby never whispered a word.
Not a word. And the report, which came out last week, also suggested that Welby must have potentially been aware of at least rumours about this appalling man's behaviour as far back as the 1980s.
Yeah, it says it's unlikely he couldn't have known what was being said about the man who was hiding in plain sight, the abuser. Yeah. I mean, he'd acted for Mary Whitehouse, the morality campaigner, in court cases. There we are, denouncing smut and immorality while he's committed himself. No, look, it's impossible for Welby to stay. I think he'll be gone today. I think when we're here tomorrow, he'll have gone.
I agree with you.
Now, his defence is he thought in 2013 the police were investigating, there was an inquiry underway, but there wasn't. No. And the Bishop of Newcastle, I've met, incredibly reasonable, very impressive person, but it's the victims, the survivors.
The Daily Telegraph...
When you were talking about it there, you just think, how do those people feel? How could Welby, in his own conscience, stay in that position when he knows he failed people who suffered the most appalling abuse?
The Daily Telegraph has been sort of running as lead on this story, and in their editorial, this is the Telegraph, which is a big supporter of the Church of England. Yeah. They say in their editorial this morning, Mr Welby was also critical of the way the BBC handled the Jimmy Savile scandal, because he really weighed in on the BBC, didn't he, in quite a few comments, which makes his own protestations of ignorance hard to sustain. So they're accusing him of hypocrisy as well.
It's huge hypocrisy. And look, he's been very quick to criticise over the government's failure to act over slavery. He gets stuck into all sorts of issues. But this was right on his watch. He's the spiritual leader of the Anglican Church. Where is his spiritual example?
You've got to look at your own house if you're throwing stones at others.
You do.
Yeah.
No, that's it. He's lost his moral authority.
And he's lost the support of the church underneath him that he leads. If you've got bishops standing up and saying that...
And more and more priests.
It's the nature of the crimes, isn't it? If somebody had their hand in the collection plate and he didn't act, that would be totally different. It's the nature of the crimes committed.
And he knew this man from Christian camps in the 1980s. They exchanged Christmas cards. I'm not saying they were friends, but perhaps his personal feelings.
Well, back in the early days, he's said to have admired him and admired the work that he was purporting to do with young men, but we now know that was just a cover.
This man was a brute. He was a brute.
I mean, you talk about those underneath him. Here's a quote from a guy called Martin Sewell. He's a lay member of the General Synod. He says, even without personal involvement, the head of a major institution so lax about crime and cover-ups should resign. But the Archbishop has serious personal responsibility. His inaction is inexcusable. I mean, there's just no glimmer of light at all for that.
And you're reporting that he's cleared his desk today. I suspect he's preparing his resignation statement, and I hope he is. I can't recall of any archbishop who's had to resign in this way before. Yeah. So what an inglorious end to his long 11 years in the job.
The Church of England, of course, is the established church of the country. I think it's a ludicrous constitutional position, but it is. But the Prime Minister's refused to back him. I think that's always telling. And of course,
he said it's a matter for the church. Keir Starmer,
And because the Downing Street normally, on appointment, has given two names and selects one, but of course it also goes up to King Charles as head of the Church of England. So Buckingham Palace can't duck this one.
Just to say that Justin Welby has issued in the last couple of days a full statement. It's a long statement, but just to take a part of it, he says, "I'm deeply sorry this abuse happened." He recognises the courage of the victims, but he establishes that I had, in his words, no idea or suspicion of this abuse before 2013. Nevertheless, the review is clear that he personally failed to ensure that after disclosure in 2013, the awful tragedy was energetically investigated. And Justin Welby goes on, since that time, the way in which the Church of England engages with victims and survivors has changed beyond recognition. I repeat my apology contained in the review that I did not meet quickly with victims after the full horror of the abuse was revealed by Channel 4 in 2017.
Susanna, it took him 3 years to meet the victims.
The trouble
3
is
years.
that this individual responsible for this horrific abuse, I think at least 130 different victims, John Smyth, if he had been more energetically investigated, in the words of the Archbishop of Canterbury, might have been brought to justice before he died in 2018.
Absolutely. And may have prevented some of these young men being so savagely beaten on a regular basis.
Where does it leave the Church of England? I mean, obviously, if he goes, when he goes, he was going to be replaced. But where does it leave the Church of England's reputation as an institution? Because we'll be talking to somebody later, the journalist who's actually initial investigation sparked the Channel 4 documentary, who says this isn't just a historic problem. He says it's ongoing right now in the Church. There is abuse going on right now under the cover of the collar.
Well, look, there's been all sorts of problems in the Catholic Church, as you know, about abuse, and the Catholic, and it's been catastrophic for the Catholic Church, particularly in Ireland. But they've had to try and get their act together. Clearly, but this is right at the top of the Anglican Church. He is the leader of the Anglican faith worldwide. It leaves it in a very poor place. And there has to be a very big analysis of what's gone wrong and a big apology.
It's terrible for the Church of England, but if it's going to move forward, it's going to have to be under new leadership. If somebody has made a mistake of this magnitude in 2013...
And did others know, too?
Can't.
That's the worry. Did others know who are in positions of authority?
Do you think he'll appear on the steps of Lambeth Palace later today and make a statement on camera, or do you think he'll issue a...
The cancelling of his diary events today suggests that's what will happen. Today's the day he'll have reflected on it. He'll realise he's lost the support.
He'll look at the papers this morning.
And quite rightly. And it's very... Can you imagine people who are in the Church of England? Like, I suppose I culturally am. I don't go to church. I'm an atheist humanist on a good day. But, you know, culturally, I know all the stories and so on. Can you imagine those people who do go to church and are mainstays and involved in the community work of the Church of England, how they must feel?
Well, I keep thinking about the victims.
Of course.
That's the problem. And who will still be grappling with enormous mental issues years later, and how many years they've had to wait for justice, and we still haven't got it yet.
Because we call it abuse, but it was torture.
Yeah, it was.
It was torture.
Horrific.
Unbelievable, violent behaviour. I mean, the man should have been back in prison for years.
All right, shall we move on to Gary Lineker?
OK.
Or do you want to do something else first?
No,
OK.
No, carry on.
Leaving the BBC, much rumoured, much heralded in the press. Is he going because of the trouble that he's been causing them with his tweets?
Well, I think so. Because I was listening to the BBC's own report on it last night, and they said it's clear he wanted to carry on, but he wasn't offered...
Another contract. He wanted to carry on Match of the Day.
Yeah. But it clear they didn't offer him the contract he wanted, and I think he just pushed his luck too far. If you are the BBC, great, stick to football commentary, but he was pushing his luck. Come on, Kevin, he was sticking his nose in party politics more and more.
Well, he compared the present government to the Nazi Party, didn't he?
He did.
At one point,
He's not a slave, is he? No, what he did...
I don't think he used those words. No, I think he said it reminded him of... I can't remember the words.
It was the asylum policy, and somebody reminded him of Germans in the 1930s, but there had been...
Which was under the tyranny of the Nazi Party.
But, Richard, there had been, that week or the previous week, a Holocaust survivor in Hampshire who had accused Suella Braverman, the then Home Secretary, of the same thing. So he was echoing what a Holocaust survivor in the UK...
What a football commentator got to do with that?
He goes at the top of his...
Well, he didn't do it as part of his football commentary. I'd just like to point out. He did it on Twitter.
But the BBC has to be held to a different standard because you have to... It's the state broadcaster. You have to be completely politically impartial.
Look,
he wasn't. And he was...
Well, no, but Andrew, I completely agree with that. If he was a political editor or a political reporter, he's not. He's the football.
But he was dragging the BBC into regular controversy by going to war with the last government.
I don't remember you criticising Alan Sugar, the presenter of The Apprentice, who would be making political comments too, which were quite reactionary from a different political direction. And I used to get fed up when some other people on the left would say Alan Sugar has to go. Now, if he's got it wrong, he has to apologise. Just as I equally got it fed up when people from the right would say Gary Lineker had to go. Look, he's at the top of his game as a presenter. I think it's sad, but I could see why the BBC will want to go in a different, cheaper direction.
He certainly had a lot.
To death of it,
he certainly garnered a great deal of support.
That's because you disagree with
when that particular crisis erupted. I mean, his colleagues kind of went on strike, basically.
Yeah.
Well, they suspended
he
him
had
and then
a
brought him
huge
back.
level of support from the fan base.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you speak for a contingent of public opinion, but actually most people were in his corner.
Why couldn't he just stick to being a football commentator, which he was very generously paid by the public, licence payers?
Because he's quite an aware person who has views on public events. That is why.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't see why you should gag him and bound him and tell him he's got to be sedated
that's what,
6 nights a week and then he can talk about football on a Saturday.
They've got rid of him because they're sick of him.
No, they'll save money on him. That's it. And I could also... He's done 25 years.
Yeah, long enough.
Now, my fear with Match of the Day is rather like a question of sport when they rejigged the presenters and thought they'd go for a younger era. They killed the programme. I hope that doesn't happen to Match of the Day, because there's no guarantee it will survive as popular as it is. Because he's very, very good at what he does.
And when they removed him from the programme, and then there was the boycott, wasn't the Match of the Day figures one of the highest ever?
But that was only because people rubbernecked to see what they were putting on in its place.
I'm just making the point the figures were higher without it.
Look, the thing is, people will always want to see the football highlights, so Match of the Day is always going to be popular.
Yeah.
But he brings his own flavour to it. I mean, for goodness sake, look, we know one of the best editions of Match of the Day was when Gary Lineker fulfilled his promise to appear in his underpants after his beloved Leicester
Come on,
won the Premier
League
title in 2016. I think this is the clip we've got. Gary Lineker may have appeared cool, calm and collected when he first presented BBC's Match of the Day 25 years ago in 1999. But he's since admitted there were a few butterflies in that first episode.
And no doubt he had a similar feeling in one of his other memorable moments, as you said, in 2016. He kept his word. He said he'd host the show in just pants following Leicester City's Premier League title win. But he managed to maintain his composure throughout. It was pretty impressive, actually. That's a pretty cool thing.
That's a huge chain he's wearing around his neck.
He could also be my body double, the way they're so buffed up, if he ever wished. No, look,
how long do you think he had to work out knowing he was going to be appearing in his pants on that edition?
Yeah, and there was no Ozempic around then.
I suspect he's pretty fit and toned anyway, but he's just got bags of personality, and I think that'll be what is going to be missing, and they're going to have to be very careful who they replace him with, otherwise they can destroy the magic of that show.
I bet it's a woman.
Oh, OK.
That's not a bad thing.
Yeah, no, I'm not criticising.
Gabby Yorris, Alex Scott, it wouldn't be a bad thing.
Gabby Yorris, very, very accomplished.
I'm not...
Gabby Logan.
Gabby Logan, sorry.
He's her professional name.
I know, sorry, yes.
Right. By the way, he is not leaving until 2026 after the next World Cup, I think. So
plenty of tweeting time.
He leaves Match of the Day at the end of
this season. Yeah, but as you say, plenty of tweeting
time
between now and then. Oh, my God. You're going to be driven nuts by Gary Lineker's
I just say
tweeting.
thanks and goodbye and good riddance.
You don't even watch the programme.
I don't. Haven't watched it for 25 years.
The usual generosity of spirit.
I don't think Gary Lineker's going to be weeping any tears about your condemnation, Andrew. OK, let's look at a much more serious issue and the details of the assisted dying bill, which were finally released last night. So I get the sense, Kevin and Andrew, that there's a sort of pulling away now that the details of this have kind of been crystallised. I wonder whether politicians are thinking, this is going to be too hot to handle. So terminally ill adults with a life expectancy of 6 months or less who have a settled wish to die, which has been approved by 2 doctors and the High Court, would be able to have assisted dying under this new law, and it's going to be the strictest in the world. You would have to be over the age of 18. In some regions, it applies to children, but not in England and Wales. and you would have to be registered with a GP for at least 12 months, so there wouldn't be death tourism to this country, and you would have to have the mental capacity to make a choice about ending your life, so you wouldn't be afflicted by mental illness and therefore do it because
and
you're
you
feeling
need 2 doctors to sign off on it, don't you?
mentally ill.
And a judge.
That's right, yeah, 2 doctors in the High Court.
And there's already
as I said,
contention as would the judge hearing be held in public or not? Because some judges are arguing it's got to be held in public because there'll be suggestion that untoward things may have gone on behind the scenes because people do not want the perception to be that the person has been coerced. But then other people won't want the hearing held in public because it's very personal.
I don't think you turn it into a public service.
Well, there are some judges who've been...
You'd want it to be an entirely private
but there are
choice.
some judges who've been arguing, who've been looking at the letters pages of the Times and the Telegraph and others, that it's got to be in public because we want people...
Couldn't we trust the judge to make those...
Yeah, but there will always be people who say they were coerced.
Yeah, but no. Those who want it heard in public are either ghouls or want to stop people appearing before a judge in public and having your whole medical... excuse me. Your whole medical records...
You're afflicted by the cough, aren't you?
I think
You've got
good for me, I think.
But you can see, she is trying to accommodate her critics and opponents. She's bending over backwards.
I wonder how
It's too quick.
significant it is, Andrew, that the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, is going to vote against. And then you've got the Justice Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, saying, I feel that once you cross that line, you've crossed it forever, going to vote against. You've got the Business Secretary, another key member of the Cabinet, Jonathan Reynolds. I would really worry about how we would protect vulnerable people. And then you've got others likely to vote against, including Angela Rayner, Deputy Prime Minister, has already previously voted against changing the law back in 2015, Chief Secretary to the Treasury, likely to vote against.
No.
Foreign Secretary, I'm worried whether we start somewhere and it ends up leading to legalised murder, David Lammy said in the past.
And I also... Look, this is such a huge step. Are they really ready to vote on this in 2 weeks?
Well, that's the date, isn't it? Remember the 29th, and that has attracted a lot of criticism that we are rushing headlong into this debate, and perhaps it should begin with a little bit more
people
time.
like Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary, believe in the sanctity of life, which is very important in the Muslim community of which he's part. And Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, says he just doesn't think the palliative care quality in this country is good enough.
No. Yeah, but there was half a dozen MPs, Conservative and Labour, who all work GPs, surgeons and so on, who all think that's a nonsense and signed a letter making that case on palliative care, which does need to be improved. But I think it's the start of the debate. I think the law will change, but I don't think it'll be this bill because it won't get through because it's put forward by a backbencher unless the government gives time. And I think because of the differences of opinion, the rifts, if you like, and the concerns of many people, I think the government would want an inquiry over a long period of time.
Well, as you would expect,
I think that's what will happen.
As you would expect, Esther Ranson has welcomed it overnight. She's because she's been hand in hand with the Daily Express, who've been pushing this big time. She's quoted there saying that she welcomes the publication of a quote wonderful assisted dying bill. She says it's the safest in the world, as you would say, Susanna. It's certainly the strictest in the world. And she says that actually I'm just amazed and thrilled to have lived long enough to hear the debate on this issue, and I just wish I could be in the public gallery of the Commons to witness it on November the 29th. If
I was an MP, I would vote for that, and I'd vote for it quite clearly. But I'd understand why so many people are concerned, and that's why I just don't think the government will give it time. I don't think Keir Starmer's going to say, right, we're going to give this time to push it through the Commons. It is have an inquiry, which could delay it for a couple of years, might even be into the next Parliament. But I think this change is coming. And why, if you don't believe in assisted dying, don't have an assisted death. But why condemn some people to live who want to end their lives? And I saw it with my dad, and he died of cancer, and at the end it was horrific.
Because there are concerns, Kevin, that people who do not want to have assisted dying will be coerced and pressurised into having it.
Yeah, well, that's where you have the safeguards.
And that's a huge problem.
And they're building in a 14-year prison sentence for anybody who does coerce
and also
anybody
difficult
into
to prove.
Very. A couple of comments from viewers already come in this morning. Neil says, I'm terminally ill. I don't want to take my own life, but already I feel as though I could be forced to.
Yeah, you see.
Because of the abuse without rights at the way that this government is treating the sick in this country. Tony says, good idea about assisted dying, but the problem is, Tony says, I was given 6 months to live. 8 years ago.
Oh.
Yeah.
I was back at work a year after that diagnosis, since retired. Kerry, dangerous and ethical nightmare road to be going down. Peter says assisted dying bill is long overdue, and with the safeguards included, I'm sure it won't be open to abuse.
It goes on now on the quiet. Life support machines are switched off. People are helped on their way.
Do not
and some people
resuscitate.
Some people take their own lives. John Monks, Lord John Monks, Labour peer, used to be TUC General Secretary, sent round to MPs and peers a plea to back the change because his and Frankie, his wife's son, had MS and had got to such a stage he was going to die, and he couldn't have an assisted death. He starved himself to death, and it was just, it was brutal.
And that is not a singular story.
No, and, you know...
Well, look, can we end on a... I'm not sure if this is an up note or a hopeful note or not, but there's this pill which you can take, which is apparently very effective in curbing your desire to smoke. And I can't quite understand why there's even a debate about this. If it's available on the NHS, which it's going to be, and if it means that people who are desperate to stop smoking but can't, not because they're weak-willed, but because they're addicted to nicotine, why would there even be an argument about whether they should be allowed to take it?
When you consider Ozempic is now given on the NHS to help people with obesity, which is costing the NHS even more, I don't see why. I used to smoke. I stopped 25 years ago, and it's a terrible addiction. And if there is a pill to help...
Did you stop first time? Was it after multiple attempts to stop?
Multiple attempts.
Same here, yeah. I smoked until I was 40.
Yeah,
I just
that's
couldn't
exactly
stop.
when I stopped. I got hypnotised.
Yeah. Did you?
In one go, hypnotised. Honestly, it worked. And out I went, and I never smoked again. And I had a packet of fags in my pocket for a month, and I never touched one. I've never touched one since.
You know, this pill, which I think the NHS England is going to make available, Amanda Pritchard, the chief executive, has announced it today. They reckon it can save up to 10,000 lives over 5 years. Smoking is still the biggest preventable cause of early death. Can you imagine if it was something else that was killing so many people and there was a cure? We'd all be backing it. And I agree, nicotine is highly addictive. The tobacco industry kills many of its customers. If it was...
It wouldn't be allowed now.
It wouldn't, no. If it was invented now, it would be immediately outlawed.
Well, that's the argument, isn't it? If there is something which is leading to deaths, why wouldn't you ban the thing which is leading to death?
So many
rather
deaths.
than then pay for another thing, which is going to help people give up the thing.
Yeah, but that is
which
now
is highly addictive.
But that's Starmer and Labour have taken up the Sunak and Conservative proposal that people who are now 15 or under will never be legally able to buy cigarettes. It's phasing them out because I think the number of people who smoke was it 14% now?
Yeah, it's going down all the time.
Used to be in the 80s.
But the thing is, when I look at the arguments against the pill, all I can see really is old-fashioned Puritanism. It's kind of, it should be down to your self-will. It should be down to your force of personality and self-discipline.
People need
it's
help.
It's not like that when you smoke.
People need help to fight some addictions. And this sounds like good help if there are no side effects with the drug.